Okay, so we have two more transformations to talk about. One is called a vertical stretch or compression. Some books will use the term shrink instead of compression, but we'll call it vertical stretch or compression. Okay, so let's look at our toolkit function. Let's do it this way. Shoot. F of x equals x squared, the quadratic function. Okay, so that's one we might be more familiar with. Hopefully we're getting familiar with our toolkit functions. And I have kind of a little piece of graph paper, but we'll just work with that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to graph, just a sec. This is f of x, right? Okay. We're going to graph g of x. And g of x is going to be 2 times f of x, okay? So we're like going to double all the outputs is what we're doing. Okay, so for the point here, when I put in -2, I'm not going to go to 4, I'm going to go to 8, which is too big for my piece of paper, but it's going to be way up there. And instead of -1, the output is 1, I'm going to go to 2. Now the output for 0 is 0, but 2 times 0 is still 0, right? And then the output for this point is 1, I'm going to double it. And the output for this point was 4, so I'm going to double it. And so I get this stretch, kind of like that it should have gone through there. Okay, so that's what we call a vertical stretch. I think of it like you draw your basic parabola on like silly putty or a balloon, and then you're stretching that balloon or you're stretching the silly putty, and then you get this elongated parabola, okay? So for a vertical stretch, it looks like this. G of x looks like there's some k, some constant k times f of x. Okay? Now, if k is positive, it'll be a stretch like we see here. If k is negative, it's also going to reflect. The negative is going to reflect it. So it'd be stretched still, but it'd be upside down. Okay. That's the way that works. Okay, now let's do a compression. So we can do the same thing. Let's see. Let's go back to our parabola. Okay, and now instead of having it stretch, we're going to do h of x, and we're going to cut everything in half. We're going to take all our outputs and just cut them in half. So we used to have h of -2, the output was 4, but now we're going to cut it in half. So it'll only be 2. And the output at -1 was 1. We're going to cut that in half, so it's going to only be, well, it's just bouncing all over, a half. Half of 0 is still 0. And then you're going to have half of 1, and then half of 4. So you get this parabola shape, but it's like somebody sat on the parabola, like they squished it. Okay? So for a stretch, if k is greater than 1, you're going to get a stretch. If k is between 0 and 1, you're going to get a compression. So if it's a number between 0 and 1, it's going to get squished. All right. Like if it had been 1/10 instead of 1/2, it would have really been squished, a lot flatter. Okay? All right. That is vertical stretch and compression. That's it.